rain had begun before dawn, a heavy, relentless curtain that drummed upon the slate roofs of King's Landing and turned the narrow streets into rivulets of brown water. In the red gloom of torchlight, Ned Stark stood beside Robert Baratheon's bier, the scent of myrrh and crushed evergreen lingering over the king's still form. Oil lamps ringed the great sept chamber, their reflections trembling across the polished marble floor like spirits unable to find rest. Ned's gray eyes, sharp as winter frost, lingered on Robert's wine-blotched cheeks, and the ragged tear in the velvet hunting doublet, a wound left by the boar that had gored the king 3 days past. Robert had looked smaller in those final hours, as though the great bear of a man had deflated, leaving only cracked armor and old memories. Now all that was left was silence and choices. The Septon's prayers faded into the sigh of the wind that wormed through the broken panes high above. Ned felt each word settle into him like snow on barren earth. Gentle, inexorable, a quiet burial of the past. He could almost taste Winterfell's cold on his tongue. Pine-laden air, distant wolves howling in dusk's bruised light. Here in the south, the air was warm and thick, perfumed with incense and something else. Fear perhaps, or ambition. Every man in the capital could feel the shifting of the realm beneath their feet. A crown was about to change heads, and iron thrones were never seated without the price of blood. Littlefinger's soft footfall slid up behind him. Lord Stark, the master of coin, whispered, voice neat as a silk purse being drawn shut. The small council convenes within the hour. Matters of succession cannot wait a day longer. Ned did not look at him. The realm has waited half a generation for peace. It can wait a few hours more to bury a king. Petyr Baelish's chuckle lacked mirth. Peace dies faster than kings, my lord, and it is far harder to revive. Ned felt the man's gaze sweep across Robert's corpse, cataloging futures. Littlefinger wore possibilities like another carried blades. Petyr bowed and stepped lightly away, the hem of his cloak whispering over the stones. Ned remained alone. Ned Stark had crossed leagues of snow and blood to aid the friend of his youth, only to watch him perish in a haze of wine and complacency. Robert's death was a candle snuffed by negligence, yet the darkness it left behind was the work of sharper hands. Ned's thoughts turned to the parchment hidden within his doublet. The king's last decree naming him protector of the realm until the rightful heir could claim the throne. Robert had spoken those words with half his breath gone, voice gravel thick and eyes swimming with pain, but the signature bore the tremor of conviction. The ink had barely dried before Varys produced sealing wax. Now that parchment was ice against Ned's ribs, even through linen and leather, a reminder of duty unasked for. He turned from the bier, boots slipping slightly on the wet marble. Outside the sept, the air pressed heavy against him, a humid cloak smelling of forge smoke, salt, and the refuse that rolled down Aegon's high hill toward the mud gate. Guards in Baratheon gold cloaks stood at somber attention, pikes upright like skeletal trees. Ned passed them, descending the wide steps into the palace yard where the rain hammered the cobbles, raising a mist that drifted before the torches. Across the yard, Sir Barristan Selmy waited beneath a stone arch. Water dripped from the brim of the old knight's helm. Lord Eddard, he greeted, voice as steady as the wall. The Queen has summoned the council to the Tower of the Hand. Odd, I thought, given that you are its lord. Ned's jaw tightened. Cersei summons many things that are not hers to command. There are many swords about this night, Selmy murmured, some of them hidden in soft folds. A chill that had nothing to do with the rain slipped down Ned's spine, and some not hidden at all. They walked together toward the tower, lightning peeling open the sky above the high battlements. Each flash etched the stones silver and white, turning the vice-like walls into momentary apparitions. Ned's leg ached where the Lannister archer had put a quarrel through it at Riverrun years before. Storms always found the wound. He set his jaw and mounted the winding stairs, Barristan's armor clinking behind him like distant chimes. Inside the council chamber, torches guttered against damp drafts. Cersei Lannister sat at the head of the long table, pale hands folded atop a scroll bound with red wax. Her green eyes glimmered like twin shards of glass. At her left elbow lounged Sandor Clegane, the Hound, scarred and silent. Grand Maester Pycelle hunched on her right, sleeves hanging like wilted banners. Littlefinger stood in shadow near the hearth, and Varys hovered by the doors, serene, in lavender robe. Only Renly sat removed, near the window slit, fingers tapping a staccato upon the wooden sill. Cersei rose. "Lord Stark," she began, voice smooth as velvet drawn across a blade. "We thank you for coming. His Grace." She inclined her head toward the doorway, as though the dead king might stride in, would want us to proceed swiftly. "The realm bleeds from 1,000 small cuts. It cannot abide a leaderless hour." Ned met her gaze, unblinking. "I come at Robert's bidding as protector until his heir can claim his throne." Cersei's smile unsettled. "That is precisely what we wish to discuss." Renly cleared his throat. "There is no question that Joffrey is Robert's heir." "He is not," Ned said, the words cool and hard, like fresh-on steel. Silence fell, broken only by the crackle of rain on leaded glass. Littlefinger's eyes flicked from Ned to Cersei, curiosity dancing like embers. Cersei did not raise her voice. "You stand upon treacherous ground, Lord Stark." "I stand upon truth." Ned pulled the parchment from his doublet and laid it upon the table. "Robert's final command." The Queen's gaze dropped to the wax-sealed decree. "And do you claim it names you regent?" "No regent. Protector. Who? Until the rightful heir, Stannis Baratheon, may take the throne in accordance with law." Pycelle's whiskers twitched. "Stannis," he croaked. "But the small folk will never love Stannis. They love sweet Joffrey." "Love is not the measure of a king," Barristan Selmy said quietly from the doorway, having followed Ned into the chamber. "Ned Stark speaks truly. The law is plain." Cersei's eyes narrowed. "The law is a tool wielded by those with power enough to make it serve." Another flash of lightning illuminated her face. Sharp angles beneath golden hair. Ned felt every man in that room tip toward one of two futures. He drew a breath, tasted iron. Renly stood. "If it is power we mean to measure, my brother Stannis rides with no more than a handful of loyal knights on Dragonstone. Joffrey commands the King's Guard, the City Watch, and the hearts of King's Landing. What throne can Stannis sit if no chair is left for him?" "Dragonstone holds fleets," Ned countered, "and Storm's End holds bannermen who remember Orys Baratheon's blood. Stormlanders will rally to Stannis, and the North stands with the lawful king." "The North is far," Cersei said. "Rivers and mountains lie between Winterfell and the capital, and 3 great armies besides." Her smile broadened. "Tullys, Arryns, Tyrells. Does your truth pierce so many shields, Lord Stark?" Ned felt the weight of those names like stones in his chest. The realm's great houses had always moved slow to heed Stannis, but Robert's will was clear, and Eddard Stark had never bent knee to usurpers of the law. "The truth does not bend," he replied. "Nor will I." The hound's gauntlet rasped along the edge of his sword belt. Tension thickened until the torches seemed to hiss. Littlefinger's voice flowed in, gentle as a brook. "Perhaps how shall we say, prudent compromise may be reached. An interim arrangement that honors Robert's wishes but maintains stability." Cersei's gaze snapped to him. Littlefinger's lips tilted, not quite an apology. He continued. "Lord Stark named Protector, with Joffrey functioning as heir apparent until such time as an inquiry settles the matter beyond dispute. Meanwhile, affairs of state proceed unhampered. The people sleep easier." Petter's dark eyes slid to Ned. "And wars stay unborn." Ned considered. But even as he weighed the proposal, the hairs on his neck lifted. Compromise served men like Littlefinger, who knew how to harvest chaos. The Queen's silence screamed agreement. It bought her months to consolidate. By the time inquiries ended, any truth would be buried beneath gold and fear. Eddard Stark lifted the parchment. "Robert entrusted the realm to me because he feared for his son. Then fear is all that shall come of this," Cersei whispered. Her green eyes flashed, and suddenly Ned knew the storm had already broken, its thunder hidden beneath courtly civility. The doors flew wide. 8 men in golden cloaks rushed in, blades drawn dodgy. At their head was Janos Slynt, grim and eager. "Lord Stark," the commander barked. "By order of King Joffrey, you are under arrest for treason." Barristan Selmy shook off the raindrops from his cloak, pulling his long sword free. "Stand aside, dogs." But more gold cloaks poured through side corridors, even as Lannister guards filled the space behind Cersei. The chamber became a glittering forest of steel, candlelight catching edges, breathing threats. Littlefinger stepped back, palms raised in a gesture of helpless sorrow. Ned's heart hammered, but his voice remained even. "I came here in peace to honor Robert's will. Blood spilled on this floor will stain every generation to come." Cersei's reply was barely audible. Then let the first drop fall swiftly. Janos Slynt pointed his sword at Ned. "Seize him." The gold cloaks advanced. For an instant, Ned saw a dozen futures, blood on the walls. Barristan cut down, Renly escaping in the confusion, Varys slipping away like a ghost. The realm would burn if blades clashed here, and the north would march south, drawn by the scream of his name. Winter fell. Catelyn, Len, Arya and Sansa. Bran, Rickon. He felt their faces like shields before his heart. Slowly, Ned unbuckled ice from his back and laid the great sword on the council table. The clang rang colder than the storm. "Very well," he said, voice hoarse. "But know this, the North remembers. And winter, once stirred, devours the crop that sowed it." Nenposten. Ahar. Slynt's men closed. Chains rasped. The topaz eyes of the direwolf pommel watched as Ned Stark was led from the chamber, and Eddard wondered if Robert had foreseen this final cruelty, that the crown he won would be the lure that shattered the Seven Kingdoms anew. E.K. Night deepened, and thunder sounded across the Blackwater as Ned lay in a windowless cell beneath the Red Keep. Water trickled through cracks overhead, pattering upon the straw. He sat against the damp wall, wrists manacled, mind turning like a mill wheel. Had he misjudged? Could he have ceded ground to prevent bloodshed? No, truth demanded tribute. Yet truth alone could be a tyrant, blind to consequence. He thought of the crypts beneath Winterfell, the statues of Stark kings whose faces bore silent judgment. Would they have chosen differently? Or was honor always a lonely sword? Footsteps approached. A key scraped. The door opened. Varys glided inside, robes whispering. "Lord Eddard," he murmured, setting a small lantern down. "We must speak quickly." Ned watched him through the gloom. "Did you come to gloat?" "On the contrary, I come to warn. The Queen means to crown Joffrey tomorrow at dawn, with all the pomp of the faith. Once he wears the circlet, your life is, pardon me, an inconvenience. I am that already." Varys's breath steamed in the lantern glow. "There is a path yet unclothed in shadow. Confess treason, bend the knee, swear that Joffrey is Robert's trueborn son. They will send you to the wall. A black cloak is a thin price for life." "For whose?" Ned asked. "Mine? Or Sansa's? Arya's? I know she remains missing. Perhaps Cersei's dagger seeks her even now. No, Spider. My confession buys their safety only so long as it suits the throne." "The Arnses. And Stannis?" Varys' voice was silk over razor. "He sails for the mainland. War will come, my lord. When swords sing, innocents weep. Think of the thousands who will die upon your honesty." Ned closed his eyes. Faces flickered. Small folk at market stalls. Children chasing hoops across dusty courtyards. Men mending nets along the Bight. Winter was coming for all, yet men sharpened their blades for autumn harvest. "I have thought of them," he whispered. "I think of little else. And yet you refuse the one lie that would save them." Ned opened his eyes, gray steel beneath storm clouds. "A lie is a sea without bottom. Wade in, and you are lost." Varys regarded him a moment, sorrow playing across his round features. "Then your tide is set. I pray your gods prove kinder than ours." He lifted the lantern, then hesitated. "But know this, Ned Stark upon the Iron Throne might scarce be worse than what now comes. The realm would have rallied. The poor might have eaten in the harsh winters. You might have built something lasting. His voice trailed into the darkness. Dreams die readily in King's Landing. Even the good ones. He left, and Ned listened to the trickle of water until dawn painted a faint smear of light along the ceiling. Somewhere above, bells tolled, deep and triumphant. The coronation had begun. But dawn's triumph curdled before midday. It began with a single rider, dust-choked and staggering through the rose-rod gate, bearing the stag-and-flame sigil of Storm's End. He shouted hoarse news. Stannis Baratheon had proclaimed himself king, calling banners from the Stormlands and the Narrow Sea. Dragonstone's galleys had slipped anchorage before first light, war flags snapping crimson beneath the thunderheads as they made for the Blackwater mouth. Word swept the city like wildfire on dry grass. Merchants barred their doors, and mothers hurried children indoors. Meanwhile, a different wind blew from the west. Lord Tywin Lannister had assembled 40,000 men at Casterly Rock and marched for the Trident in a blaze of crimson and gold. The Riverrun smoldered. The villages of the Blackwater Rush wept. In the Red Keep, chaos bloomed. Cersei tightened her grip upon the city watch, but every garrison officer looked toward the horizon calculating. Joffrey preened upon his new throne, barking decrees in a boy's petulant voice, and each command sounded thinner than the last. Grand Maester Pycelle shuffled between ravenries, quills scratching frantic pleas for loyalty to lords who no longer listened. Renly had vanished with a score of knights from the Rainbow Guard, galloping south toward the Reach, where Mace Tyrell's harvest of blades would grow ripe at his call. And through it all, the common folk whispered a name spoken in northern taverns and storm-lashed hamlets. Ned Stark, not dead, some said. A traitor, said others. A man of honor, said a few, scarce above a breath. For walls in King's Landing had many ears. By the third day, the storm broke. Ships bearing stag banners appeared beyond the harbor chain, sails taut with a gale that seemed born of war itself. Inside the city, Golden Company spies lit casks of wildfire in the Street of Sisters. Plumes of emerald flame roared skyward, painting the dawn an unholy green. Panic surged. The gold cloaks abandoned posts to protect their own hearths, while Lannister guards cut down any who dared cry treason. Bells clanged over the cacophony of screams, sword-ring collapsing timber. In his cell, Ned felt the castle tremble. Distant booms like dragon drums. Chains clattered as he pushed to his feet. The door burst open. Arya Stark darted inside, face smudged with soot. Gray eyes wild. She wore a boy's hose and a stolen dagger at her belt. "Father!" "Arya." His voice cracked on her name. She sprang forward, small arms wrapping around his waist. Ned's breath hitched. He clutched her tight, manacles scraping her tunic. For a heartbeat, the world outside vanished. She pulled back, fierce urgency burning in her gaze. "Syrio says we have to go. Now." Behind her stood a man in Night's Watch blacks. Yoren, the recruiter. He held a ring of keys. "Thought you might appreciate a quieter road north, Lord Stark." Yoren growled, unlocking Ned's shackles. "The Queen's eyes see too much when light's bright." "My daughter, Sansa." "Cersei keeps her close," Arya spat. "And Joffrey's dogs snarl at her heels." Syrio tried. Her voice broke. She swallowed hard. Ned's heart clenched. "We save whom we can," he murmured, fingers brushing her hair. "Sansa will endure." He glanced at Yoren. "Where?" "Rat ways beneath the castle. Out a postern into Flea Bottom, then to the docks. A black sail skiff waits." Ned hesitated only a breath. The echo of duty and blood warring within. Honor lay in protecting realm and family both. But a dead man safeguarded nothing. Robert's realm was lost for now. Perhaps it could be reclaimed by another hand, another day. His children's lives were a legacy worth any price. He nodded. "Lead." They wound through passages seldom trod, past cracked statues and weeping walls. Distant roars pulsed through the stone like the heartbeats of giants. At one bend, Varys stepped from shadow to shadow, offering a silent nod, eyes sad. He slipped a small scroll into Ned's hand. News from Winterfell, perhaps, or from Stannis. The eunuch vanished before Ned could speak. Finally, cold air kissed their faces as they emerged behind a toppled granary near the hook. Smoke billowed across the river. The city blazed behind them. Ned gripped Arya's hand, the charred boards creaking underfoot as they made for the waiting skiff. Yoren shoved them aboard, then loosed the rope and shoved off with an oar. The black water carried them into a fog of ash and dawnlight. Above, dragonstone black sails of Stannis' fleet loomed like mountainous wings. Ned looked back once. The Red Keep crowned the hill, crimson banners drooping in sodden wind, flames licking lower walls. Somewhere in that maze of stone, Sansa wept. Somewhere, Catelyn rode south with a host of Tully spears, unaware. Somewhere, a boy king played at crowns, while lions sharpened talons behind his throne. And in the north, winter crept. The skiff passed beneath the shadow of a mangonel, hurling stones toward the city walls. Ned's eyes burned with salt and smoke, and the knowledge that his choice tonight would echo across the Seven Kingdoms. He had abandoned the Iron Throne, but bled hearts rarely belonged upon iron seats. Perhaps a different road awaited him, paved with oath and sorrow, leading not to crowns, but to something older, colder, truer. The North would remember, and one day, God's willing, it would answer. Far upriver in the castle of Riverrun, Catelyn Stark received 2 ravens in the same hour. One bearing Stannis' call to arms, naming Ned Stark a loyal servant wronged by the Lannisters. The other, a desperate plea from Sansa, penned in a tremoring hand. "They will make father confess, or they will kill him. Please, mother, help us." Cat felt words like a dagger sliding slow beneath her ribs. She stood upon the battlements, watching the tumblestone coil beneath moonlight, and weighed letters against each other. Duty to the realm or to blood, justice for her husband or mercy for her daughters. The sky offered no counsel. By torchlight, she summoned Brynden Tully, the Blackfish, to her solar. "Prepare the men," she told him. "We ride at dawn." "South or north?" he asked. "Both," she whispered, and placed Stannis' letter upon the hearth until flame consumed the ink of destiny. On Dragonstone, Stannis Baratheon stood before the painted table, fingers tracing the jagged coastline of Blackwater Bay. Red woman's shadows danced on the walls, cast by candles scented with strange spice. Melisandre's voice flowed around him like hot wind. "The Cold One walks upon waves of blood. Only king's blood can warm the dawn." "My blood is king's," Stannis said. Melisandre's red eyes glowed. "Aye. And there is another, wolf blood, touched by ice and honor. 2 flames, 1 shadow. The darkness cannot consume both." "Nandari." Stannis looked eastward, where the horizon hid the city he meant to claim. "Then we must see which burns brighter," he said, and closed a calloused hand around the hilt of Lightbringer. "Kai koi, ein umda." Beyond the neck, in cold Godswood, Bran Stark dreamed of 3-eyed crows and a throne of roots that whispered in an old tongue. A direwolf paced at his side, eyes gold and sorrowful. Snow fell in the dream, yet the wolf's pawprints smoldered like embers. Bran reached for the wolf, and when his fingers brushed its fur, he saw a man carved from ice and fire sitting upon a throne not of iron, but of bone-white weirwood. The man's eyes were Ned's, and in his lap lay a crown of black steel. Bran awoke, panting, the foretelling chill lingering in his bones. The maester soothed him with elderflowers, yet Bran clung to the vision, feeling the land itself stirring beneath his bed like a giant rousing from slumber. "Father," he whispered into the dark, "hold fast." And Abdonis are doing. In the dungeons of Harrenhal, a faceless man remarked to a girl of shadows, "A debt is owed. 3 lives for 1. When the time comes, say the names." And Arya Stark, though she did not yet understand, nodded in the gloom and felt the weight of the north settle on her small shoulders. Chai-Yain. And across restless camps, smoky taverns, and cold manors, the songs began. A new verse woven into old ballads, of a direwolf who would not bow, A stag divided, and a kingdom splintering like obsidian struck by winter's hammer. In every refrain, one name rang: Ned Stark, Lord of Winterfell, twice crowned, king who laid aside the iron. Some cursed him, others prayed, but none could escape the tale's unfolding, for the Game of Thrones had turned anew, and the candles of peace guttered low. In time, war would write fresh legends, of rivers red, of dragons born of stone and shadow, of snow falling in halls of summer. Yet beneath each saga ran an older current, cold and unyielding, the riverbed of honor, carved by men like Ned Stark, whose truths cut deeper than swords. Winter was coming, and the Iron Throne, though seated in blackened rubble, would learn that iron alone cannot command hearts forged in ice. And the black water parted like a molten road beneath the skiff's prow, bronze dark and seething in the half-light. Ned Stark crouched low beside Arya, rain-soaked cloak plastered to his shoulders, while Yoren's broad back shifted with every stroke of the oar. Lantern light from a burning galley rippled across the water, throwing red shards over Arya's face. She watched it all with feral curiosity, as if each tongue of flame were another secret to pocket. Ned felt her hand find his in the bottom of the boat. Small, cold, determined, and he closed his fingers around hers. For 2 silent heartbeats, they were father and daughter, adrift on an empty sea. No crown, no oath, no war between them, only the pulse of shared blood. Then ash fell like black snow, and the world resumed its clamor. They threaded among drifting corpses and shattered spars. Above, war horns groaned on the city walls, echoing across the bay in broken calls. But deeper still, Ned heard the living chorus, screams carried on wind, metal shrieking against metal, the thunder of collapsing towers. The city behind them glowed hellish green where pockets of wildfire still consumed the Street of Sisters. A mangonel stone hurtled overhead and vanished in the smoke with a crash that rattled ribs. Even in flight, honor demanded he witness what his choices had birthed. He forced himself to look back until the red keep sank behind the haze, a crimson phantom slowly drowning in its own ambition. Yoren shoved the skiff into the lee of an abandoned quay beneath a broken gatehouse. Fishermen's huts huddled atop rotted piers, shutters banging in the gale. They tied off, killed the single lantern, and listened. Nothing greeted them but the hiss of rain through rush roofs and the distant boom of siege engines. A narrow alley opened inland, choked by toppled crates, already half flooded. Yoren drew Ned aside. "River road's a mess o' pikes," he murmured, voice gravel beneath the rain. "But a night's trek north along the mudflats'll put us by the hook where my wagon waits. Then we ride hard to Maidenpool. Ships there'll take any man for a coin, and these two," he jerked a thumb toward Ned and Arya, "will be new recruits to the watch. That badge buys little honor south of the neck, but it buys us quiet." Ned glanced at Arya. She bristled, sensing a cage in the plan, yet she held her tongue. Another lesson Syrio had taught her: patience has keen teeth. Ned nodded. "We move." They wove through alleys where shuttered brothels leaked cheap perfume into the rain, past wine shops whose crushed jugs lay spilled like entrails across cobbles. Rats searched for softer bodies, and hounds fought over a corpse still wearing a half-melted breastplate. Arya's face hardened at the sight, but she stepped lightly past, mud splashing to her knees. Ned kept his eyes sweeping, recalling every footpad's nook from his month's hand. Finally, they reached the city's northern river gate, closed, chained, unguarded now that the battle raged south. Yoren led them through a postern set in crumbling brickwork, and out onto salt flats where reeds bowed under wind like shattered spears. For hours they slogged ankle-deep in brine. Storm echoes rolled overhead, rattling Ned's lungs. More than once, Arya stumbled, caught by Yoren before she fell into hidden tide pools. Each time she pushed away angrily, but she kept pace, jaw set. Dawn ghosted the east when they found the wagon, a ramshackle prison cage atop groaning wheels. Gray recruits already shivering inside. Thieves, poachers, boys too poor to bribe a jailer. The smell of fear and unwashed hope clung to the wood. Yoren tossed Ned a rough-spun cloak the color of river mud, and shoved a sheared wool cap over Arya's hair. "You're airy now," he said to her. "Keep the hood down, say bugger all, and when we reach the King's Road you're naught but a rat-catcher's bastard bound for the wall." Arya opened her mouth. Yoren scowled. "No, not another word, O lord or lady. Rats, that's all." She glared, then spat into the reeds, acceptance in the gesture. Ned squeezed her shoulder. "Your brother Bran climbs walls like cats. You can master a rat's tail of a name." She gave him a crooked grin, and it vanished at the crack of hooves behind them. Out of the gray mist emerged 4 gold cloaks on muddy destriers, visors down. Yoren cursed. Ned's hand found the hilt of the short sword the recruiter had pressed upon him in the skiff. Metal rasped as blades came free. The horses fanned to block flight. "Stand aside, Black Crow," the leader called. "By command of King Joffrey, traitor Stark is forfeit to the crown." Yoren stepped forward, crossbow leveled. "King, is he? I missed the tourney." He spat. "This road's mine. These men," he nodded at the cage, "swore vows to take black. You gonna break the faith now? Break your own sep's oaths?" A cough of thunder rolled. The officer hesitated. The Night's Watch enjoyed ancient privilege. To hinder its recruits invited censure from the faith. But royal edicts blunted many old blades. He sneered. "Stark's no recruit. Hand him over, and take the girl too." Ned eased Arya behind him. Sword angled low. The wind drove rain across his face, but his voice was ice. "Turn back. I have seen too much blood this night." "Nevin." The officer raised a hand, command to advance. Crossbow strings thrummed. Yoren's bolt took the second rider through the throat before the man's horse screamed and reared. Ned lunged beneath the flashing hooves, blade carving hamstrung muscle, and pulled the dying horse sideways to shield Arya. Mud exploded. Ned rolled free as the beast collapsed, pinning its rider. He came up inside the ring of destriers, driving his sword once, twice, quick thrusts into unarmored joints. Another rider toppled. Steel sang. The last gold cloak swung a heavy sword at Ned's head, sparks flying where it glanced from his guard. Ned felt the old wound in his thigh flare, but he pivoted, parried hard, and punched his pommel into the visor grill. Bone crunched. The man sagged. Ned ended him with a single weary stroke. Silence, broken only by Arya's ragged breathing and the hiss of rain on steel. Yoren kicked the fallen officer's helm aside, revealing a boy not 5 years older than Robb. "Fools," he muttered. He wiped his blade in grass and looked to Ned. "More will come. Their blood'll mark the trail." "Naberdin." Ned surveyed the bodies, saw the fear still trapped beneath their wet lashes, and felt no triumph. "Then we cleanse the trail," he said. Together they heaved the corpses into the tidal mire where hungry crabs would finish the work. The horses they freed, sending them riderless into the fog. Arya crouched by the caged recruits, watching, imprinting every motion. Ned wondered what forge her childhood would become by the time they reached the wall. They rolled north, wagon wheels groaning, dawn bleeding tarnished silver over the salt flats. Ned walked beside the bars, hand on the wood, feeling every jolt as though it rattled his own spine. Arya squatted on the wagon bench, arms wrapped around knees, hood shadowing her face. She said little, eyes fixed on the road ahead. Each mile seemed to age her another year, bone and heart stretching to house some vast, growing flame. By midday the King's Road appeared, carved ribbon of rutted stone cutting through farmland already stripped bare by foragers. Smoke from distant holdfasts smeared the horizon. Refugee carts crawled south, loaded with orphaned children, goats, hearth gods wrapped in linens. They gave the black wagon wide berth, fear of the wall stronger than fear of war. Ned watched them pass and felt the realm fracturing like ice underfoot. These were the innocent Varys had spoken of. Faces he could name now, remember. Yet the path behind him was stained, and the path before offered no sound. That night, they camped in a ruined sept, surrounded by toppled headstones. The recruits huddled around a guttering fire, trading scraps of stolen bread. Arya slipped among them, silent, listening. Ned sat with Yoren on a cracked granite step, studying maps inked on oiled parchment. Maiden pools 2 hard days if the wheels hold. Yoren said, tapping a crooked fingernail against the coast. But better if we cut cross-country through the Trident's forks. Fewer patrols, fewer eyes. More swamps, Ned replied. And Lannister outriders skirmish across those fields. The recruiter shrugged. Lions or swamps? Only one drowns a man, polite like. Ned traced the neck of the Trident northward. Somewhere beyond those blue lines Robb marshaled the banners of the north. A raven would fly from Maester Luwin soon, if not already, bearing the tale of his father's supposed treason and flight. Robb's heart would burn. Ned pressed a hand to the map as if smoothing rumpled cloth. He must not march yet. Yoren spat out a twig. Boy's blood is flint and tar. Sparks already struck, I'd wager. Ned said nothing. He closed the map. Wind sighed through shattered stained glass above them, scattering colored shards over moonlit stone. Ruby, sapphire, emerald, like pieces of crowns, left in ruin. He wondered if any throne, iron or otherwise, could be built without breaking some sacred thing. They rose before false dawn. Fog wrapped the wagon in pale ribbons, muting wheel creaks. At the crossroads of the burned hollow, they found a gibbet where 6 bodies twisted in the early light, tongues swollen black, eyes pecked away. A placard swung beneath. Traitors to his grace, King Joffrey. Ned felt Arya stiffen beside him. She swallowed once, teeth gritting. Leave them, Yoren murmured. Look too long and you'll carry their weight. Arya stared nonetheless, memorizing horror for later reckoning. Ned placed a hand atop her hood. We see, we pass, we remember. She nodded, and they moved on. Toward evening, they reached the northernmost ford of the Trident's Green Fork. Water ran high, churned by storm runoff. Tree branches bobbed like drowned arms. Yoren halted the wagon on the bank. A lone rider in gray mail waited beyond the ford, banner drooping. But not Lannister crimson. The sigil was a leaping trout, Tully. Ned's chest tightened. The rider urged his horse into the flood and splashed across. Up close Ned saw the man's cloak pin, blackfish and silver. He saluted. Lord Stark by the Seven, it is you. The knight dismounted, helm tucked under arm. Ser Desmond Grell, of Riverrun. We feared you dead. Ned clasped his forearm. I live, though the realm is poorer for it. He motioned to Arya. My daughter. Ser Desmond bowed. Your lady mother awaits you both. Lady Catelyn gathers swords on the Red Fork. Riverrun rides for King's Landing within a fortnight. Ned's stomach twisted. Cat had chosen war. Stannis holds the Blackwater. King's Landing is a blade between 2 hammers. He drew a careful breath. Take us to her. Yoren grunted. The wall. Later, Ned said. Arya met his gaze and nodded. Family first. They abandoned the wagon to the recruits. Yoren would continue with his charges, and took fresh horses from Desmond's remount tethered in the woods. Lean river coursers, fast on muddy banks. They rode at dusk, torch at the lead. Arya pressed between Ned and Desmond. The Trident's damp air smelled of loam. Fireflies drifted like lost souls among reeds. Every splash of hoof in shallow water made Ned tense, but no pursuit came. Campfires dotted the western bank. By midnight, tents of Tully blue and Stark gray intermingled, like cranes and direwolves sharing roost. Sentinels challenged, then cheered when Desmond named Ned. The clamor brought Catelyn from her pavilion, hair unbound, cloak clasped against the chill. She halted at the sight of Ned, disbelief blooming into fierce joy, tempered swift by fear. They met in a silent embrace that seemed to draw every grief from the night sky, and folded between them. Arya seized her mother's waist, burying a face in wool. Cat stroked her hair, tears streaking mud from Arya's cheeks. When they stepped apart, Catelyn's eyes searched Ned's face for truth. Sansa. In the keep, Ned said. Hostage, yet safe so far. Cersei plays a longer game. Catelyn's jaw set taut. Safe is a word mothers learn to mistrust. She drew him into the pavilion. Maps littered the table. Troop movements, supply lines sketched in ink. Robb marches south, she said. 20,000 swords. He means to flank Tywin at the Twins, cross the Green Fork. Join my uncle Brynden striking east. We thought you dead, or in chains, to be executed when Joffrey tired of sport. Then, he will, if war doesn't first undo him. Ned detailed Stannis' fleet, Renly's flight, Tywin's host. Each name tasted of impending burial. Cat listened, fingers drumming map edges. When he finished, she breathed out once. Slow. Robb must not charge headlong, Ned said. We can force a parley. Stannis presses from sea, we from north. The lions will see the trap. Cat shook her head. Kings do not parley when children are their coins. Joffrey will trade our daughters one piece at a time. Arya, perched on a camp stool, eyes glittering, spoke. Then we free her ourselves. Both parents turned. Ned saw in Arya the spark of Lyanna. That same reckless honor untempered by years. He knelt. Not yet. A blade swung too soon severs more than chains. Arya frowned, but accepted the rebuke like a sheath accepts a knife, holding her edge for later. Catelyn laid a hand on Ned's shoulder. Come morning, you and Robb speak beneath the direwolf banner. Your voice tempers his fury. She paused. But the men, river, north, mountain. They already sing of you. King Eddard, they whisper. A king who turned his back on the Iron Throne because honor refused the price. They will follow you, Ned. They will follow you, Ned. They will follow a crown of quiet iron. Ned's gut clenched. I seek no crown. Crowns seek men. Sometimes. She held his gaze. And Stannis claims the realm with fire and shadow. The north may need its own beacon, cold, steady, lit by hearth and heart, not wildfire. Night deepened around them. Outside, the camp drums quieted, leaving only the rivers, murmured hymn. Ned closed his eyes, saw the Iron Throne scorched by green flame, and beyond it, snow falling across broken lances. He tasted Winterfell's wind again, pine and promise. Perhaps the realm's salvation lay not in iron but ice. They slept little. At dawn Ned rode with Cat toward the forward camp where Robb met with lords. Mist curled off the Trident, turning camps to ghost towns. Trumpets sounded when they approached. Robb strode from his command tent clad in mail, gray wind at his heel. The direwolf halted, sniffed, then bounded forward, massive jaws parting in silent joy. Ned dismounted as the beast knocked him to a knee, licking rain and travel dust from his face. Laughter rippled through assembled captains. Robb reached them, eyes blazing with tears unshed. He knelt amid the mud, arms circling his father. No words bridged the gulf. Only the raw, breaking relief of blood returned. When they rose, Ned studied his son. A man now, shoulders squared by duty, lines of sleepless nights burnishing youth. He felt pride and sorrow mingling. A father glimpsing boyhood's vanishing horizon. Robb drew breath. Teach me, he said simply. Ned clasped his forearm. Together, we will learn. Council convened. Lords Rickard Karstark, Galbart Glover, Roose Bolton gathered, joined by Brynden Blackfish, Edmure Tully, Maejay Mormont. Their voices clashed like hammers. Speak of supply, scouts, Tywin spears burning villages along the Red Fort. News arrived that Renly had raised banners in the Reach, crowned by 1,000 golden roses. Stannis besieged kings landing by sea, but could not breach the chain. Amid the din, Ned's voice carried, steady and grave. We are 3 armies against 2, yet disunited we will serve only carrion crows. Stannis fights for lawful claim, Renly for popularity, Tywin for gold, Joffrey for fear. But he swept the table, fight for Clan, and the words that bind them. Eddard Stark will not wear a crown while another Baratheon's heart beats. Yet the north and riverlands require their own defense. We march south, not to conquer the realm, but... Lord Karstark growled. And if kings bar our path, then we remind them winter does not kneel. Roose Bolton's pale eyes glittered. A hard winter, Lord Stark. Best ensure we hold the harvest. His tone carried something older than skepticism, calculating hunger. Ned met it without flinch. Feed the people, clothe them, protect them. A lord's first oath. Break it and the North will flay more than skin. Bolton's thin lips curved. As you say, my lord. That night, a council of ravens leapt skyward. One flew to Stannis bearing Ned's seal, proposing a conference on neutral ground beneath the walls of Storm's End. Another winged toward Renly, challenging him to prove honor in lieu of pageantry. A third, darkest of all, sped to Cersei Lannister. An ultimatum: return Sansa unharmed or face the combined wrath of North and River. Ned knew she would laugh and burn the parchment, but steel courtesy demanded the offer. He sent one final raven to the wall. To Lord Commander Jor Mormont. It carried only 12 words. Tell Jon, winter creeps south faster than we knew. Guard the realms. He spared no mention of paternity or crowns. The wall understood secrets. For 3 days, the host broke camp and formed the march. Columns curled along the river like iron serpents. Ned rode with Robb at the van, Arya atop a shaggy pony beside Grey Wind. As they passed villages, peasants cheered or stared in wary awe. Torn between hope and dread, Cat rode with Brynden weaving supply lines, her voice steady as arrow flight. Each night Ned walked among men at fires, listening to their songs. Old lays of Bael the bard mingled with new verses praising the king who laid aside iron. He corrected none of it. Songs were rivers, impossible to dam. On the 7th evening, a rider bearing the crowned stag of Stannis approached under truce. Sir Davos Seaworth, humble in cloak of patched grey, dismounted before Ned's tent. Lord Stark, he said with rough courtesy, my king accepts your parley. He will meet you at Storm's Road Ford 3 nights hence. Bring 2 companions, he the same. Ned inclined his head. Tell him honor rides with us. Davos bowed and departed. Later, by campfire, Robb argued to accompany him. Cat insisted they bring Maester Vyman for witness. Brynden wished 10 swords in hiding. Ned listened, smiling slightly. Trust is a blade tempered by caution, he said. Woo, carry both. He named Robb and Brynden his companions. Arya scowled at being excluded but made no complaint. They reached the ford beneath pale moonlight. Storm's Road cut between weather-bent oaks, the stream swollen but fordable. On the opposite bank waited Stannis Baratheon astride a rangy roan, armor unadorned, but for a flaming heart on his breast. Beside him sat Melisandre in scarlet silk and Sir Davos again. Behind, only 2 spearmen stood sentinel. Ned dismounted midway, water lapping knees, and Stannis mirrored him. They approached until a single sword's length separated them. Lord Stark, Stannis said, voice like granite grinding. You fled the city, yet left your head behind. Strange bargain. My head remains my own. Ned met his gaze. My daughter does not. Cersei's cruelty is a lash with many tails. I would seize the city, free your girl, hang the queen, and cleanse the court of rot. But my fleet breaks on wildfire, and Renly lures half my strength with promises of perfumed feasts. Then join cause, Ned said. North and River strike from land, you from sea. We bind Renly with truce and cut Tywin's supply lines. In return, I pledge fealty to the rightful king. The Iron Throne is yours if you win it with justice. And now. Stannis' eyes narrowed. Justice, Robert's coveted word, wielded like an axe, then forgotten when no head rolled. You speak honor, Stark, yet winter shows no mercy. Justice is older than mercy, Ned replied. And winter respects old things. The Red Woman's voice slipped between them. In my king's veins burns the blood of Azor Ahai reborn. Lightbringer shall awaken in smoke and salt, when his foe most needs shadow. Will the wolf kneel to fire, or freeze before dawn? 9? Brynden growled, hand on hilt. Ned raised a palm. Prophecy is a strange fire, my lady. It warms believers and burns doubters alike. He faced Stannis. Answer. Stannis studied him a long while. I will have the throne, Stark. No compromise. Renly must bend the knee. The Lannister boy must die, and his mother. Would you abide that? Ned pictured Joffrey's sneer, the memory of his order to seize Ned echoing through vaulted halls. Execution might spare the realm further torment. Yet Sansa's gentle heart still loved her prince, blind though that love might be. He forced steadiness. The boy's more lion than stag. His fate lies in your hands if taken in fair fight. But mercy to the innocent fosters loyalty. Mercy breeds rebellion, Stannis said. Robert's reign proved it. Ned countered. Robert's wine cup proved it. Mercy without governance is rot. Governance without mercy is terror. A muscle twitched in Stannis' jaw. I will consider your proposal, but I will take your fealty now. Nah. Ned drew the dagger at his belt, pricked his palm, and let 3 drops fall into the ford. I, Eddard of House Stark, Lord of Winterfell, Warden of the North, pledge sword and hearth to Stannis of House Baratheon, first of his name, rightful king of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the First Men, so long as he upholds honor, law, and the safety of my blood. The river carried his blood downstream, a thin red ribbon lost amid silver currents. Stannis stepped forward, clasped Ned's bleeding hand in his own gloved grip, and nodded once. So sworn, so witnessed. Brynden and Davos echoed the oath in whispers. Melisandre's eyes gleamed. A flame kindles in darkness, yet shadows grow beside it. They parted before dawn. Ned rode north to his camp, thoughts heavy. The banner of the crowned stag on Red Heart now flew beside the direwolf, and men muttered at the alliance, some relieved, others wary. Roose Bolton voiced concern to Robb about bending knee. Karstark feared southern quagmires. Ned addressed them, calm and firm. The North seeks not conquest, but return. Stannis' victory saves Sansa and spares this realm another generation of war. If he breaks oath, the rivers will wash him away, and winter will remember. Nay, I'm fine. Bolton's pale smile flickered. Winter remembers many things, my lord. We shall see which memories warm its heart. Messages flew toward Renly, offering truce if he would forego crown and serve as hand. To Cersei went the final warning. Release Sansa within 10 days, else face siege by land and sea. Days passed. Ravens returned from Renly promising parley at Bitterbridge. None came from the Queen. Instead came smoke. Scouts rode hard with word that Lannister outriders torched villages along the Mander, cutting grain before harvest. Tywin massed at Harrenhal with 30,000. Edmure's outriders clashing in bloody skirmishes. Worse, whisperers reported that Cersei had moved Sansa from the Red Keep to Harrenhal's black vaults, a captive beneath dragon-scorched towers. Ned felt the hammer blow. Harrenhal's walls were thick as the wall itself, its dungeons labyrinthine. Tywin's fury and Cersei's cunning nested there like twin vipers. Taking it would bleed tens of thousands. Robb banged fist upon the map. We ride now. Smash Tywin before he digs talons. Brynden counseled caution. Cross the twins, outflank him, cut supply from the west. Bolton suggested darker paths. Any night assault, ropes, and quiet work. The girl can escape in confusion. Ned listened, heart torn. He looked at Arya, now sparring daily with a wooden sword Robb's smith had fashioned, and saw the echo of Sansa in her features, softer lines yet hidden under grime. He could not lose them both. He spoke. War on 2 fronts tempts ruin. We break Tywin's grip at Riverrun first. Save the Riverlands. Secure grain, hearts, and passage south. Stannis' fleet harries the capital. Renly's roses blockade the Mander. Tywin starves. Cersei's fortress becomes her cage. Yes. Arguments erupted. Ned raised a hand. The North has bent knee to its king for this cause. Follow, or carve your own doom beneath lion claws. Robb backed his father. We ride to Riverrun. The host turned west. Rain followed like a curse, mud swallowing hooves. Along wooded glens, Karstark outriders tangled with Lannister scouts. Each skirmish another page of the saga songsmiths would twist for years. Ned rode often beside his son, teaching him to read smoke on horizon, to weigh risk against speed, to temper wrath with measured steel. Robb listened, grim but eager. At night, Ned told Arya stories of Brandon the Builder and the forging of the wall. She drifted to sleep, dreaming of giants, an old smile returning to her lips. 10 leagues from the twins, a raven found them, Renly dead. Slain at Storm's End in the black of night, throat opened in his own pavilion. Witnesses swore no assassin entered or left. Rumor spoke of shadow with a man's face. Melisandre's prophecy loomed. Lords of the Reach fell into chaos. Half proclaimed allegiance to Stannis, half to King Joffrey. Swayed by promise of Lannister gold, Tyrell riders melted back toward Highgarden, leaving the marches exposed. The news spread through camp like sickness. Some cheered, one rival down. Others regarded the Red Woman's shadow tales and crossed themselves. Ned sought solace in the wind among willows, mind turning on darker axes. If prophecy birthed shadows that slew kings, what shield could mortal men raise? He remembered the crypt dream Bran had described, an icy throne of roots, and wondered if older powers stirred beneath their feet. A second raven arrived late, from Stannis. Renly is dead. Lightbringer burns. I march at dawn to King's Landing. No mention of how the usurper brother fell. No reassurance of law and honor. Ned felt the old unease coil. He burned the letter and met Bryndon's gaze across the flame. Bend a knee too soon, the blackfish rumbled. And you rise chained. Ned turned as gray wind howled into the dark, the call taken up by distant wolves. Arya stood beside the dire wolf, hair whipped into wild halo by storm gusts. Her eyes reflected lightning, twin sparks of the coming storm. Ned felt the ground itself breathe. 3 nights later they reached the twins. Lord Walder Frey greeted them with as much warmth as thawing ice, but the promise of marriage alliances and gold bought passage. The host crossed the Green Fork in grumbling columns, banners sodden in downpour. On the far bank, Ned met a messenger of tall, lean frame wearing dusty gray. Howland Reed of Greywater comes south with 100 Cranogmen to honor old oaths. Reed knelt, eyes sharp as cattail spears. The neck is yours, Lord Stark, he said. We smell Lannister scouts like fox piss on snow. Tell me where to bleed them. Ned clasped his friend's shoulder, old tears unshed. Memories of the Tower of Joy flared. Lyanna's rose-scented chamber, blood on white swords. He swallowed the past. Hold the eastern marches. Hound Tywin scouts until they fear their own shadows. Reed smiled thin, as reed grass bending to wind. Our shadows wear teeth. Bolstered by Cranogman and Frey levies, the army pressed toward Riverrun, now under siege. Lannister catapults hurled flaming stones, and red tents dotted the dikes. Smoke pillars crawled skyward, carrying the stink of burned timber, barley, flesh. Crows circled like black standard-bearers. On the ridge overlooking the south bank, Ned called council, beneath storm banners snapping. Rain sheeted off his cloak, pooling on the map between them. Bolton proposed a night assault across hidden fords. Glover urged swift charge. Karstark wished to lure Tywin into battle on chosen ground. Ned listened, then sent Arya to fetch Reed. Together they unveiled a forgotten path, pallets stacked by millers across shallows north of Riverrun, concealed beneath rushes and silt. Cranach scouts swore the ford could bear a column single file at dawn's hush. Ned assigned Reed and Glover to lead the vanguard, while Karstark formed hammer on the southern ridge. Bolton kept reserves to plug gaps. Robb would ride with the first wave. Ned insisted on second, to watch the field wide. Night cloaked preparation. Fires were tamped low, armor wrapped in wool to muffle clank, horses shod with rags. Ned walked between ranks, murmuring Winterfell words of home. Warm hearths, children's laughter, the scent of hot bread, reminders of what waited beyond blood. He found Arya beside the picket line, sharpening a small dagger gifted by Reed. "Stay back tomorrow," he said. "I can fight. I know. But war devours pride first. Live and prove valor when blade meets blade in purpose, not chaos." She looked at gray clouds scudding beyond torch glow. "I will live," she promised. "For Sansa. For Bran. For Ghost." Ned rested his hand upon her head. "For yourself. Never forget that. Menda Raste." Dawn bled gold through ragged cloud. Horns clay-thick signaled. Cranogmen slipped into the river, bodies low beneath waterweed, guiding logs by rope. The cavalry advanced single file, hooves silent on damp planks. Mist hugged the surface, cloaking passage. On the far bank reeds rustled. A bird cried once, Then Glover's vanguard burst through fog into Lannister's sentry lines, spears gleaming. Grey wind leapt ahead, dragging guards from saddles, throat growls drowning their screams. Trumpets blared alarm. Chaos flowered. Ned watched from rise as Karstark's hosts surged downhill, banners streaming like wings of wrath. The clang of contact roared across the river flats, drowning wind. Fires erupted where pitch kegs toppled beneath bolts. Bolton's reserves moved like wolves waiting for scent of weakness. Ned breathed war's bitter perfume. Iron, mud, fear. He spurred in, sword raised. Around him, the world shrank to rhythm. Parry, thrust, wheel, strike. A red-plumed Lannister captain met him with flourish. Ned sidestepped, caught the descending blade against hilt, pivoted, and cut an arc that ended the man's dance forever. Another assailant wore studded leather. Ned slammed pommel into his visor, head cracking like walnut. Horses screamed. Men slipped on blood-slicked grass. Rain fell and steam rose where it struck heated steel. Across the fray he glimpsed Robb, scarlet cloak torn, leading grey wind in deadly ballet. Each bite and blade clearing space. Hours stretched. Eventually horns exhaled in ragged submission. The Lannister line crumpled, pockets of gold cloaks throwing down arms. Riverrun's gates burst open, and Tully cavalry sallied, driving besiegers into rout. Ned saw Edmure atop a chestnut charger, face streaked with soot, raising a broken spear in victory. The roar of relieved soldiers washed over fields like thunder. Yet Ned's gaze sought only the prisoners penning in bowers at river's edge. Among them stood a tall woman in crimson cloak, blonde hair bound. No, not Cersei. Others, captives from lesser houses. No Sansa. Ned's heart panned. She remained at Harrenhal. That night within Riverrun's great hall, torches illuminated banners of Trout and Direwolf hung side by side. Wounded filled corridors. The scent of boiled potherbs and blood clung thick. Minstrels attempted a victory tune, but the melody faltered against walls heavy with ghosts. Ned stood before assembled lords, rain drying in his beard. "Today we freed the rivers," he said. "Tomorrow the storm breaks on the capital. Yet our work is half done while my daughter languishes and lions still hold the Tower of Kings. We cannot linger. We march on Harrenhal." "Now, Ned?" A murmur rippled. Harrenhal, seat of terror, near impassable. Robb stepped forward. "The wolf does not sniff at lion tracks, he hunts." Bolton folded thin hands. "Tywin retreats south. His strength outnumbers ours even now. Strike Harrenhal and find lion teeth meeting bare throat." Edmure banged fist against table. "Walls blackened by dragon fire cannot melt courage. We slew dragons once. We'll open Tywin like a basted pig." Ned silenced them. "We move, but not blind. Maester Luwin's ravens tell of northern winter pressing early. Grain stocks thin. We need the harvest, Harrenhal's granaries, the King's Road depots, to feed our men and small folk alike. Tywin would starve the realm to break us. We break him instead." Named Amar. Cat approached, Sansa's letter clutched still. She laid it before the lords. Ink had run in places, blotting words, yet the fear rang clear. "We owe the girl more than promises," she said, voice quiet but cutting. "Harrenhal's walls are stone, but stone cracks." Howland Reed spread a crude drawing. Hidden pools under God's eye feeding tunnels, once used by fisherfolk. "Water erodes stone from underneath," he said. "Cranogman can find those channels, bring men in by night." A plan formed. Reed swimmers by water. Arya among them for stealth. Glover at North Gate. Karstark on east. Bolton feigning attack south to draw Tywin's main host. Ned would lead the rescue party. Robb the siege line. They would strike within 7 nights, moon dark. The assembly broke into frantic motion. Provision lists, forge orders, scouts dispatched. Amid the whirl, Ned found a quiet alcove, where Arya practiced lunges with her dagger. She stopped when he entered, sweat beading brow. "You mean me to swim tunnels? You know water and shadow, and you know Sansa's face better than any." He knelt. "It is perilous." She nodded, wiping blade. "Needle would be better than this," she muttered. "You will have Needle again," Ned promised, voice cracked. "When winter ends." She sheathed the dagger, straightened and bowed, not as a child, but as a soldier receiving charge. Ned pulled her close despite armor, feeling her heart hammered daring against his ribs. As she stepped away, he caught the scent of river mud and pine, scents of home lost and sought. In the black hours before dawn, Ned climbed Riverrun's eastern tower alone. Lightning-stitched clouds, the world below flickered between day and night. He looked east to Harrenhal, though miles and hills hid it. Somewhere beyond darkness Cersei planned, Tywin drilled, Sansa prayed. Somewhere to the south, Stannis' ships clawed at chains of wildfire, and to the north Jon faced white winds upon ice walls. The realm stretched like taut bowstring ready to snap. Ned whispered into the storm a prayer older than Seps, words of the old gods, nameless, formless, woven with wind, through leaves that no longer crowned southern trees. He asked for strength, for mercy, for paths that returned all his children to winter's hearth. The storm answered with thunder, neither promise nor refusal, only echo of power beyond men's ken. He descended as first light broke, face set. 5 hours of war awaited the next sun, then 5 more, then 500. The Game of Thrones might end in ash or snow, but in the quiet places where men held fast to honor, seeds of a gentler spring survived. Ned Stark clasped that fragile seed like a talisman, a promise to outlast iron. In river camps, drums began their slow heartbeat, summoning soldiers from sleep. Fires blossomed across the fields, stars fallen to earth. Gray winds' howl rose to greet the dawn, and thousands of voices answered, wolves and men alike, bound by hunger, hope and memory. The storm banners unfurled. The march to Harrenhal began. Moonless dark drew its veil across the riverlands, swallowing the shattered towers of Harrenhal, until they loomed like fangs against a starless sky. 5 nights had passed since Riverrun's reprieve, and each day Ned Stark's host pressed closer, bleeding supply lines and burning lion banners abandoned in flight. Now campfires guttered beyond arrow shot from the cursed fortress, their glow muffled beneath tar-soaked hides. No trumpets split the air. No minstrel dared sing. Silence itself had become a spear aimed at Tywin Lannister's heart. Inside Ned's command tent, a single beeswax candle cast wavering gold over the faces of those gathered. Robb leaned over a chalk-smeared board, tracing trench lines around Harrenhal's outer wall. Brynden stood opposite, arms folded, shadow swallowing half his scarred cheek. Howland Reed crouched near the ground cloth, carving small grooves in damp earth with a bone pick. Subterranean channels he had scouted beneath the god's eye. Maester Vyman unrolled a parchment of raven tidings beside them, while Catelyn sat slightly apart, needle flashing through gray wool as her hand stitched sigils in blind habit. Only Arya paced the tent's edge, dagger twirling through fingers, impatience vibrating like a harp string. Ned's knuckles whitened around the mapboard. "Tywin expects a siege," he murmured. "Stone for stone, that game favors him. He holds the girl and half the grain stores of the Trident." Reed tapped a gouged channel. Tunnels breathed beneath the southeast curtain, built for drainage, widened by time. Water waist deep, gates rotten. If we pass 10 men through, they may open the east sally, break the ward chain and draw the guard while the main host feints north. Nian. Robb's brow furrowed. 10 men in drowning dark. 10,000 spears outside. If the doors fail, Arya caught the dagger hilt and stilled. They won't. All eyes turned. Ned felt the hush thicken. Yet he answered first. "We choose those 10 with care. Men who know silence. Men who will not lose heart when black water swallows light." Brynden nodded. Cranogman for the crawl. My river, scouts to follow. And one Stark to lead. His gaze flicked to Arya. Robb shifted, voice low. "Father, she's but..." "I'm quick in tight places," Arya cut in. "Sansa's cell could be no wider than a castle privy. A knight in plate shan't crawl where I can." Catelyn's needle stopped. Her lips parted on protest. But Ned raised a hand. "She speaks truth." Size is armor in tunnels. He inhaled, tasting the tang of cold iron and candle smoke. Yet a father chooses between risk and ruin. Arya, are you sworn to see this through no matter the dark? Her gray eyes, mirrors of his own, did not waver. I swore the night I ran from the Red Keep. A silence, broken only by the candle's timid hiss. Ned's heart ached, but the siege would devour more lives than 10 if her blade proved key. He gave a single, grave nod. Then, so be it. Howland, choose your 8. Brynden, pick one scout captain you trust above blood. They move tomorrow at dusk. Vyman cleared his throat. Word from Stannis, my lord. He tapped the parchment. Fleet broke the chain. Loss heavy but city's river gate aflame. King's Landing starves behind smoke. Lannister stores dwindle. The small folk revolt nightly. No. Catelyn resumed stitching. Desperation breeds savagery. And rash bargains, Ned replied. Cersei will lash at any weakness. Ours, Stannis, her father's. He turned to Robb. Our task remains. Free Sansa, seize the stores. If Tywin breaks for the capital, we harry his heels. If he holds, we starve him in turn. Robb straightened. I ride with the Hammer Column west. Karstark and Glover with me. Mother remains command at rear. Catelyn looked up, startled. I stay. Ned laid a gentle hand on her shoulder. Heart of the host needs a keen mind, not another blade. You see lines we miss. Her fingers tightened around the cloth, but she inclined her head. Plans set, the council dispersed into night's damp chill. Ned lingered at the tent flap, watching Brynden clasp Arya's small shoulder, murmuring instructions. Howland passed each Cranog volunteer a sliver of weirwood. Talisman against drowning. Ned felt the shape of the old gods folding over them like boughs of a leafless tree. He found sleep only when gray pre-dawn crept under canvas edges. And even then his dreams twisted. Lyanna's scream echoing through Harrenhal's broken towers. Blood on a bed of blue roses. Sansa calling from a windowless cell. He woke with heart pounding to the distant boom of siege drummers. Dawn had burned away the mist, revealing the fortress in stark clarity. Black walls scored by dragonfire, towers melted like candles. Yet still they loomed unbroken. Crows wheeled overhead in their thousands. Throughout the day, Ned's army shifted into assault lines hidden by hedgerows and low ridges. Cranog outriders guided carts piled with coal tar barrels to a shallow ravine near the north gate. Bait for Lannister eyes. Archers strung heavy yew-bows, their shafts fletched gray and blue. Maester Vyman oversaw field chirurgeons, sharpening bone saws, boiling cloth. War's machinery assembled piece by quiet piece, every man speaking in whispers as though a shout might rouse the castle to wrath. When sun bled into evening, Howland's swimmers donned leather harnesses stripped to skin, river slime smeared over cheeks. Arya traded cloak for tight gray tunic, bound her hair, and tucked her dagger inside a waterproof sheath at the small of her back. Ned knelt before her near the water's edge. Lanterns were shuttered, only dim dusk glinted off the god's eye as waves lapped like slow breathing. He tried to form words of fatherly farewell, but found none safe. Instead, he pressed a small bone figurine into her palm, the direwolf he carved for Bran years ago. Bite the dark, he whispered. Arya's throat bobbed once. She tucked the token under her collar and squeezed his hand so hard he felt the tremor run to his elbow. Then she turned, waded into chill water, and vanished beneath reeds, silent as dusk's last sigh. One by one the Cranogman slipped after, ripples swallowing them. Brynden's chosen scout, Sir Willem Wells, followed last with a coil of hemp rope slung across narrow shoulders, and a grin that was more snarl than mirth. Ned watched until water stilled, then forced himself to step back. Robb stood beside him, helm under arm. If she fails, Robb began. She will not, Ned said, voice flat as steel. Moon climbed, pale and small, when signal fires sparked to life atop 3 northern towers. Tywin's order to ready ballistas. Brynden's warhorn blared. Glover's axes hammered shields in reply. Ned's main column surged from behind hedgerows, torches guttering, drums beating a low thunder. Lannister sentries shouted, arrows lanced down. Ned rode behind the first rank, shield high, Ice's little brother, an old Northforge longsword drawn loose. It was all faint, a storm to veil the river ghosts. Beneath the walls, in sewage-sweet gloom, Arya crawled through water that rose from ankle to chest, fingers groping along slick stone. Reed's led scout, a wiry man named Minnow, for the way he slipped through gaps, guided by faint glowworms bound in clay jars. The tunnel roof pressed low. Carp splashed around their waists. Twice Arya felt shapes brush her thigh. Rats or eels, she could not tell, but terror hardened into focus. Sansa, wait. They reached a corroded iron grate, sagging half loose. Minnow wedged a greased wedge beneath one hinge, while two others braced. On silent count they heaved. Rust screamed. Echo swallowed by fortress roar above. The grate fell inward, water swirling through. Arya ducked between bars and found herself in darkness deeper than any godswood night. She felt along the wall until fingertips brushed a stone ledge. Above, faint air currents teased. Minnow hissed. Stairwell, 2 paces. She climbed first, each step slick with algae. At the top, rotting wooden planks patched a hole. Arya pressed an ear, distant clatter, booted stride, a man cursing dice. She waited a dozen heartbeats, then slid a thin blade between boards, eased the latch peg, and pushed. The hatch rose a fingerspan. Warm stench wafted, turnip stew and men unwashed. Timing breath with hammering outside. She slipped up, rolled beneath a trestle table, stacked with sacks. 4 Lannister guards lounged near a hearth at room's far end, spears propped. One threw dice, another gnawed a drumstick. Arya counted the span to a side door. 10 quick steps. An alcove shadow. Minnow emerged, knife already wet with tallow for silence. He tapped her boot once, now. Arya sprang. The first guard glanced up. Her dagger pricked through his windpipe before sound left his lips. Minnow slashed another across hamstrings. Brynden Scout clubbed the third. The fourth grabbed for spear. Arya threw her boot knife. It buried to hilt in his eye. He toppled into the fire, flesh sizzling where cheek met coals. They dragged bodies behind barrels, doused hearth with stew pot, and ghosted into corridors. Harrenhal's innards yawed wide, a maze of collapsed halls and fresh timber buttresses. Shadows lay in jagged pools. Torched conslight flickered like fever. Minnow led by memory from scouting years past. Left turn, spiral up, gallery of weeping faces carved in stone. Arya followed, pulse loud in ears. At last they reached the cell block beneath Maiden's Tower where rumor placed Sansa. 2 gold cloaks dozed on stools. Reed's second fen loosed arrows from 4 paces. Strings whispered. Shafts buried feather deep. Men died before waking. Arya found the ring of keys, palms sweating. Cell doors lined the hall. Splintery oak banded in black iron, peep slits reeking of mold. She forced the first key. Empty. Second. Irons clanked inside but not Sansa. Third. Groan of rusty hinge revealed 3 small folk women, eyes wide. Arya whispered, "Stay silent. Follow the Cranogman." They blinked, tears nodded. Fourth door stuck. She wedged, shoulder, pushed, hinges shrieked. Candlelight within revealed Sansa Stark, curled on straw. Hair knotted, cheeks hollow. For half a heartbeat Arya froze, disbelief a blade through her gut. Then she sprang forward, whispering her sister's name. Sansa gasped, startling awake, chains rattling at her wrists. Recognition dawned, and tears burst. Arya cut manacles with jailer's keys, hugged her fiercely, straw crunching. Footsteps clanged on stairs, alarm roused by that squeal. Fen shoved freed prisoners toward hatch route. Minnow pressed a torch into a tar jug. Flames flared. "Run south," he told them. "Follow tunnels." He smashed torches into bedding, straw whooshing alight. Smoke bloomed. Arya tugged Sansa into hall where 5 spearmen barreled down. Minnow rolled one underfoot, gutting him. Arya darted inside guard swing, slit thigh artery, pivoted, hamstrung the next. Sir Willem's heavier sword chopped 2 skulls like melons. Sansa shrank back against stone. Shock wider than terror, yet no scream left her. Composure born of courtly cage. Arya grabbed her hand. "North Gate," she hissed. "Father waits." But the stair they came by thundered with armored boot. Sir Willem cursed. "Too many. Alternate path." Minnow pointed to a postern walled, since Aegon's war, but half crumbled. They kicked loose mortar, squeezed out onto a broken stairwell that opened into the Yard of Sighs. Above, Siga Din roared. Karstark's pikes against Outer Bailey. Explosions of tar kegs along North Wall. Fire arrows streaked overhead like falling stars. They sprinted. Crossbow bolts clattered from arrow slits, missing by feet. Sansa stumbled. Arya hauled her by elbow. Minnow blew a bone whistle once. Signal to Reed's watchers. From the shadows beyond stables, a dozen Cranogmen rose, loosing javelins into tower slits, providing cover. Arya's band cut across courtyard to the East Sally Gate, where earlier infiltration team had unbarred doors. Grey cloaks waved them through. Outside, chaos painted the night. Glover axes hacked at burning palisades. Bolton's reserve banners flapped blood-red against rising smoke. Ned, astride his black destrier, saw Arya first. Her small shape emerging with Sansa pale behind. Relief rammed his ribs. He spurred forward, carving through stray pikemen. Arrows hissed by. He reined in, dismounted even before horse halted, and wrapped Sansa into arms. She collapsed against him, sobbing, wordless. Arya wiped grime from her cheek with the back of a trembling hand, then knelt to catch breath. Ned pressed a kiss to her mud-slick hair. "You did what kings failed," he whispered. But respite was brief. Trumpets within fortress changed pitch. Tywin signaled retreat to inner ward, sacrificing yard. Firelight glimmered off gilded helmets as Lion Shield Wall formed, roaring challenge. Grey wind bounded to front lines, howl shaking the burning sky. Robb's voice carried, "Advance!" The real battle began. Ned guided Sansa to healers at rear, then donned helm and strode to his son. Line upon line of shields met them amid falling ash. Lannister knights rode heavy, but obsidian chunks of Harrenhal's yard tripped their mounts. Pikes found gaps in barding. Ned fought shoulder to shoulder with Robb and Brynden, feeling time peel away until he was a young man beside Robert again. Yet now no laughter roared, only grim resolve. Ice's brother bit plate, tendon flesh. Sweat stung eyes, lungs burned. But ground crept beneath their boots closer to the shattered steps of the Kingspire Tower. Arrows rained from parapets until Reed's bowmen scaled postern ladders and cleared ramparts in silent wave. Glover's axes splintered gate joists, the North Sally crashed wide. Karstark's hammer columns slammed flank, Bolton's reserve flooded breach with grim efficacy, flaying standard-bearers to sow panic. At last horns of Riverrun answered. Edmure's exhausted riders burst through smoke, rallying fleeing small folk freed from dungeons to raise improvised spear ranks. Tywin himself appeared before the Kingspire, flanked by household guards in crimson cloaks so fresh they seemed painted. The Lord of Casterly Rock sat his dappled warhorse, visor lifted, though blood spattered his cuirass. His gaze remained cold coin. He surveyed encroaching storm of wolves. Lightning flashed behind towers, silhouette carving him like an effigy on tomb marble. Ned advanced, boots crunching glassy black slag. Their eyes locked across blade-scattered yard. For heartbeat the clamor faded. Ned heard only wind breathing through melted stone. Tywin spoke first, voice carrying uncanny calm. "Lord Stark, I had wondered if honor alone forged you iron. I see now it forged a storm." "One?" Ned answered, "and your gold has gilded enough graves." The old lion's jaw moved, whether humor or disdain Ned could not tell. "You have your whelp, take your wolves and go. This castle dies, but I do not. Yield, and you may live to rebuild what your pride burned." Tywin's gauntleted hand caressed his horse's mane. "A Lannister yields only to death, Stark. So be it." He raised sword, horns blared, battle crashed anew. Grey wind leapt first at Tywin's charger, tearing at its throat. The horse screamed, reared, collapsed, rolling its rider. Guards swarmed. Robb cut through too. Brynden blocked a third. Tywin rolled clear. Lost helm. Silver hair soaked red where stone cut brow. He staggered, but his sword flicked out, hamstringing a pike spearman. Ned closed, deflected thrust meant for Robb, riposted. Tywin parried with serpent speed. Rain began to fall. First gentle, then in sheets. Hissing on hot steel, washing blood into glistening streams across slag. Visibility dimmed, torches sputtered. The yard became a swirling maelstrom of dark and flame. Ned circled, measuring Tywin's stance. Low guard, weight to back foot, favoring left knee. He feigned a high slash. Tywin bit. Ned slid inside, elbow smashed jaw, sword pommel hammered helm-dented brow. Tywin reeled, crimson painting his white beard. He swung wide. Ned ducked under, thrust upward. Point slid beneath gorget, ripping mail, parting flesh. Tywin gasped, eyes wide. He staggered backward into Grey Wind, who loomed snapping. A guard hacked at the direwolf, but wolf jaws closed on sword arm, bone cracking. Tywin fell to knees. Rain plastered hair to his face, blood pumping from neck wound in pulsing sheet. His eyes met Ned's one last time. No plea, only contempt lorded to the end. Then color drained. He pitched forward into mud. A shout rippled through Lannister lions, lion roaring betrayed by fortune. Some fought harder for vengeance. Others broke, scattering toward inner keeps. Karstark's spears pushed them. Bolton's men cut retreat. Ned called cease once Tywin's banner-bearer toppled. But battle's inertia dragged minutes longer, until horns signaled surrender at every gate. Harrenhal belonged to the wolves. Smoke drifted from gutted stables at dawn. Rain cleared, leaving fortress black and steaming. Field chirurgeons moved among wounded. Priests lit votive candles where none had prayed in years. Ned walked ramparts with Catelyn, eyes on sunrise. Below, freed smallfolk collected bodies for pyres, singing low dirges. Sansa stood in clean robe atop tower balcony, gazing east where King's Landing might still burn. Arya perched beside her, boots dangling over edge, hair wild in morning gust. Sisters spoke softly. Perhaps of wardrobes, perhaps of daggers, each finding bridge across gulf of trials. Ned knelt to greet them. Sansa folded into his embrace, tears silent. Arya smiled, tired but unbroken. Robb arrived, arms splinted from spear nick, Grey Wind pressing flank. Ravens ready, he reported. One to Stannis with tidings, one north to Winterfell. Command yours. Ned rose, scanning war-torn horizon. Send another to the wall. Tell Jon the realm yet stands. He paused. And one to Storm's End, to Brienne of Tarth. A woman sworn to Renly may wish an oath renewed. Robb raised brow but nodded. Later, Ned convened lords in melted great hall beneath warped rafters. He addressed them from seat carved out of fused stone, a throne shaped by dragonfire, cruel and jagged, yet now bearing direwolf sigil hammered hurriedly in steel. The lion's roar is stilled, but war's shadow lingers, he said. Stannis presses King's Landing. Cersei clings to her cubs behind walls of fear. Autumn's first snow touches Moat Cailin. We will not chase crowns into ruin. We will mend roads, feed villages, guard women and babes left orphaned by ambition. Harrenhal's grain fills our stores. Its shadows we burn away. If Stannis be true king, he shall find in us swift ally. If he break faith, winter will remind him Northmen kneel to no tyrant. Down. Karstark and Glover beat spears to shields. River Lord cheers echoed rough stone. Even Bolton bowed head, smile unreadable. When council ended, Ned withdrew to Godswood sapling planted by some doomed lady centuries prior, leaves crimson despite blasted soil. Sansa placed a flower at trunk. Single blue rose plucked from gardens charred but not dead. Ned felt memory stir. Lyanna's promise kept through sister's bond. He closed eyes, listening for whisper of old gods. Wind rustled leaves like pages of a book he had just begun to read. That night, Sansa joined healers, binding wounds with gentle hands. Arya trained with Brynden by torchlight, blade ringing bright. Robb pored over letters from Stannis, reports of Wildfire victory, of Cersei's flight with Tommen and Myrcella toward Casterly Rock. War not done, only turned. Ned climbed to Kingspire's highest breach, where molten stone formed a jagged ledge. Below lay moon-silver mirror of the god's eye, surface calm after tempest. He breathed deep of rain-washed air and considered roads ahead. North to fortify against snow, south to aid Stannis in purging Last of Lions. East perhaps if Dragonstone's red woman conjured more shadows. But first, rebuild Harrenhal into refuge, not haunt. Prove a crown could be forged of hearth and duty, not iron thrones or burning swords. Footsteps approached. Catelyn. She slipped her arm through his. They watched dawn's second light spark over water. "We began this for our daughters," she whispered. "And ended it for every child who feared a lion's claw," he replied. She rested head on his shoulder. "Not ended. A winter's work remains." Ned kissed her brow. "Then, let winter find us ready." Below, bells newly hung in Harrenhal's courtyard pealed clear and bright, scattering crows into pale morning. Their cries faded into distance, replaced by echo of hammer on anvil, saw on timber, voice of builders shaping ruin into home. Across the realm, ravens carried Ned Stark's decree. Harvests spared, levies released, amnesty offered to small folk pressed into lion service. Some lords scoffed. Mercy again. Yet others, weary of ash, embraced the colder law. At Dragonstone, Stannis received the letter and read by candle guttering low. He pondered the wolf's words, justice tempered by mercy, and set parchment aside. "Tell Ser Davos," he said to the shadows. "The North shall have its seat at council when the throne is won." Beyond the wall, Jon Snow raised torchlight to Raven's scroll, reading his father's hand. "Guard the realms. Remember who you are." He folded message, steel glint caught by aurora, dancing above ghost-white woods. In the distance, a horn sounded. 3 long blasts. Ice-cracking prophecy open. Seasons turned upon those distant notes. Snows deepened. Seeds slept. But in Harrenhal's courtyard, a young direwolf carved from weirwood stood newly planted, its roots drinking from centuries of sorrow, branches reaching for a gentler sun. Beneath it, children played at sword and shield. Bakers' sons, masons' daughters, orphaned waifs saved from dungeons. Arya taught them footwork. Sansa taught them songs. Grey wind chased laughter. And Ned Stark, Lord of Winterfell, protector of the realm, walked among them not as king, but as father whose choices had forged a quiet dawn in the furnace of war. Some said the Iron Throne still ruled men's hearts. Others swore its age was ending, that ice and honor would remake the 7 kingdoms. Yet in the hush between raindrops on black tower stone, one could almost hear a new verse being spun. Of a king who turned from iron, of wolves who guarded hearths, of lions who learned the price of pride, and of daughters who kindled hope where ashes once lay. And when winter at last came, it found the north not broken, but tempered. Steel in snow, fire in ice, honor in every breath,